Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In Podcast. This week we head back to the Apex for one of the better main events of the year, in my opinion. At lightweight, top contenders, Rafael Fiziev takes on Mateusz Gamrot, 5-round there. In the co-main event, another exciting fight for us, man. At featherweight, we got Bryce Mitchell taking on Dan Ige. It's a total of 11 fights for us to break down. Hopefully we give out some winning bets in the process. Do us a quick favor real fast. Like the video, sub to the channel, and as always, before we jump into the main event, man, pass it over to you. Let you talk about how we finished up at Noche UFC last week.
Yeah, so mixed bag of results last week. We'll take a look over at your card first. Overall, really weird fight night, man. A lot of close decisions and obviously a really weird way to end the main event.
Mm-hmm.
We'll actually start with that on your card. You had Valentina Shevchenko, who, that was the worst 10-8 call I think I've ever seen, which is obviously a bad look for the judges. But, as far as I'm concerned, I do think that Alexa Grasso did enough to win that fight. So I'm actually okay with the draw. As far as how it came out, I want to see that fight again, and I'm happy that we're going to, and that's Dana White's mindset as well. Yeah. You also had Daniel Zellhuber, who ended up getting the finish. You paid a juicy price tag at -230, but that ended up paying off. Looked like a good bet. Tracy Cortez versus Jasmine Jasdavicius. Another close fight, but you do want to have the Mexican side on Mexican Independence Day. It's I think she was the rightful winner, but it did come down to a pretty close third round there. We both had some money on the Edgar Chairez Daniel Lacerda fight. That one ended up being a no contest with an early stoppage. I think the dude was out, to be honest with you. I think the fight was going to be over. It was just a matter of another half second or 2 seconds before the fight finished, but it is what it is. Let him go out. It's a submission. It's not going to kill him.
All right.
You had another parlay with Godinez to win, and then the under in the Rosas Jr. Terrence Mitchell fight. That was bound to hit. I thought that was a really good parlay. You did that for a unit. And then you had a long shot parlay, 0.25 unit stab.
Yep.
What do you expect? You ended up plus 2.38 units. Good finish to your night. We'll take a look over at my card. I was pretty upset, man. I took 4 underdog shots, and one ended by draw, one ended by split decision loss, one ended by no contest, and the other one was another really, really close decision. And they were all plus money. Sadly, if any of those would have gone my direction, I would have had a positive night, but that was not the case. I think my best read on the night was Godinez wins by submission at plus 340. Absolutely crazy number with somebody like Elise Reed, who has some obvious holes in her MMA game. I hate that I did this. The Alex Reyes versus Charlie Campbell fight starts round 2 at plus money. I thought that Alex Reyes was going to try and shake off a little bit of that ring rust, try and extend the fight a little bit. And I thought he was going to hang on for me for a little bit. Charlie Campbell, that pressure is pretty intense, and he ended up getting the finish. And then I also took a little long shot parlay that never, wouldn't have mattered really. We had a no contest in the Lacerda fight, and then fight doesn't go the decision in Cortez. I thought there were some finishing chances, but it was a long shot for sure. Minus 1.35 units on the night. Not the worst when you go 0-4 technically on your straight picks. So whatever, I'll take it. Moving on to the first fight of the night, we start in the bantamweight division. Montserrat Rendon taking on Tamires Vidal. I might go an underdog right off the bat here, man. Tamires, she's physical, but she's reckless at times. She uses her physicality to get her out of some tough situations. She throws hard shots, but she loads up on those punches, and you see kind of some greenness in her striking defense where she'll just turn her head and look to clinch up. But she does have a pretty strong BJJ game and a strong grip if she does start to work her offense. On the other side, with Rendon fighting out of Mexico, a little bit of a late start to MMA at 34 years old, but has this crazy frame, pretty basic striking fundamentals, but she has some physical gifts as well. Hasn't found that finish yet, but she does throw a lot of counter punches when evading the attacks of her opponents and has some pretty decent volume. I want to say that Rendon wins this like 50% of the time But Vidal has so much finishing upside that I think when Vidal wins, the other 50% of the time, she's going to look minus 1,000. So I might talk myself into playing Rendon here. So, she'll be my pick, especially at dog odds. But I'm not don't have a lot of conviction in that pick. But the odds are kind of making me want to play Rendon here.
Yeah, I don't have too much really to add to it. I would never be laying 2-1 on Vidal. But I think Vidal's got the tools to win this one. A lot younger, faster. You kind of talked about little athleticism. She's a real opportunistic finisher. And, she got like heel hook. She got like the flying knee to the midsection of Ramona Pascal. And that's definitely not going to translate up to the higher level of women's MMA. But in these lower fights, she's dangerous, In Rendon, you talk about 34 years old, just now kind of making her debut. She's a big girl, man. She looks strong. She looks jacked. But I'll be honest with you, the skill set for me just looks a little basic. You see her going to split decision with some low-level girls on the regional scene. So I don't really see enough that makes me want to get behind the underdog. But I'll agree with you, at the odds, it's dog or pass. I'm just gonna slightly side with Tamires Vidal to start the night. Get another women's fight out of the way. We got Mizuki Inoue taking on Hannah Goldy. Big elephant in the room for this fight. Inoue is a massive favorite, and she's coming off of a 3-year layoff. But I know you kind of talked about your little rule. Anytime a fighter, big layoff, still under 30, room for massive improvements, And honestly, in the past, you see a girl like Mizuki Inoue go to split with Brundage and Daroba at like 24 years old. At 26 years old, she's going to decision with Amanda Lemos in a tough fight. She's a tough girl. She's got a good clinch game. I think she's a whole lot faster than Hannah Goldy. And I see her just kind of grinding Hannah Goldy out to a decision here. Goldy's someone I don't know how committed she is to the game at this point. She's lost 3 of her last 4. And as jacked and stocky as she is, she's more of kind of like a sidekick point type of fighter. And I don't know. I like Mizuki to close that distance, put her on the cage, probably grind out an easy win here. So won't be laying the juice, but in a way, it's a pretty easy pick for me in the second fight.
Yeah, so we see this fight really similar. I do think this is a smash spot for Mizuki. Huge grappling upside, and I don't trust Goldy coming down in weight here. Never really been impressed with what I've seen from Goldy in the past. And it's exactly same feeling. She's got a really boring fight style for as physically intimidating as she is. I do think that she has a pretty good chance of just getting straight up outclassed here on Saturday. And I'm not too sure that Mizuki can't find a finish here, where I think that she holds just a significant edge over Hannah Goldy. So Mizuki's the pick for me. Moving up to the heavyweight division, Jake Collier versus Mo Usman. I think right off the bat, there's going to be a clear athletic advantage for Usman. He really likes to showcase that physicality by pressing his opponents up against the cage, working from takedowns from that position. Mo's also probably the bigger power puncher, and he swings big when he throws. His shots in those first 2 rounds could put anybody to sleep, but they do start to have less of an effect as the fight extends. And he's pretty planted on his feet. He doesn't really have great footwork, and you kind of see that as the fight extends. Collier, I know early in his transition to heavyweight, he looked great with the amount of volume that he put up. But since then, he's still kind of maintained that striking number. But he's 1-4 in his last 5 with a few extremely disappointing losses in the mid. Knocked out by Huggy Bear, given close fights to guys like Carlos Felipe and 40-year-old Arlovsky. The one thing I do like about Collier is he is dangerous in the first round. He likes to set that pace early. I don't have much faith in him at this point in his career, and I do think that Usman presents a bigger threat for the finish than all of Collier's last 3 losses. But I also believe that Collier will be a bit faster in the feet in the early exchanges. I like Usman to find a finish, but I'm also tempted to find a play on the under here in a fight that I think a lot of people think that it's going to be a heavyweight over type of fight. A lot of people love betting overs in the Collier fights. Not me. I hate that. So, the under in the heavyweight fight. Who would have thought it?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was just about to say. You love your heavyweight unders when they give you a generous number, and I like it. I'll be honest with you, and I kind of see the fight pretty similar. I see a lot of love for Jake Collier online, but my gut's kind of leaning toward the Mo Usman side at -150. I still do consider Jake Collier an overweight 185er, despite these pictures coming out online. could be fooling you guys with the shirt on. I know he looks a little thinner, looks a little better shape, but we're still talking about a 185er who's blown up to heavyweight on a 3-fight losing streak to someone, like Chris Barnett, which is something I personally, you lose that fight, and I don't know if I'm ever backing you again, You talked about his volume. You talked about his hand speed, things I have here as well. Usman, man, twice the athlete, twice the power in terms of like ace out in the fight, who they're wanting to prop up here, or, former champion's brother, ultimate fighter, winner. And I think the biggest discrepancy here is in the grappling. I think Mohammed Usman can win a ton of minutes if he's just wants to put Collier up against the fence. I think he's so much stronger than him. They call him the motor for a reason. Like, for one, I think both of the guys actually have an above average gas tank for the heavyweight division, although it does taper off a little bit. I actually do think for one of them that they're not just absolute gassers. And I think Mo Usman can kind of keep that pressure for 2.5 rounds, 3 rounds, and mix in a takedown or two. We've seen Jake be put down and have absolutely nothing off his back. I've seen Jake strike for 15 minutes and have the cardio to do so. But any of these fights where he's made to work, where he's made to clinch and grapple, it seems to really zap the gas tank and the energy of him. I think if Mo Usman's willing to mix any of that in, he could find himself a late finish here. So I'm gonna side with Mo Usman. Kind of the bet been staring me in the face as well, but I kind of like that under that you've been talking about.
Yeah, let me add one more thing to that under. Collier, if he comes out in this fight like he did against Martin Buday, he's going to knock out Mo Usman, man. He came out like a bat out of hell against Martin Buday, and he just so happens he walked into the biggest blockhead of the division who you cannot knock out if you try. So
Usman's spin is a bit iffy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Collier's back is absolutely against the wall in this fight. I'm sure that he understands that if he doesn't come out here and get a finish, the motor is going to wear on him over 3 minutes or over 3 rounds. And, his chances deplete significantly. So I love that. I love that under. I think we're going to get a good line on it.
I think that'll be on both of our cards this weekend, actually, man. That's good find for us. Cool. Moving on, middleweight division, Jacob Malkoun taking on Cody Brundage. I told you earlier before we started, seeing -500 next to Jacob Malkoun's name it's pretty wild considering, that this was a guy who one time just got a roster spot due to his relationship with Robert Whitaker and training with him and everything, And now the guy's won 3 of his last 4 fights, and watching it back this week, I bet Brendan Allen there, and I think Brendan Allen lost that fight, man. I think Malkoun really could be coming in here on a 4-fight win streak. Here's the thing, though, and you kind of brought it up to me, and it's something like a couple weeks ago, and it's something I've been trying to kind of put into my betting game. Malkoun's got a limited skill set. He's one-dimensional guy, and I don't see multiple paths to victories for a -500. I feel like he's got to get the fight down to the ground. I feel like if Malkoun's ever in a fight where he's not taking somebody down, he'll never cover -500 price tag. Brundage, a dangerous man, early man, backs up against the wall, fighting for his job on Saturday. He's somebody who already has like 90% of his wins in round 1, and I think that could spell trouble for Malkoun early. But if it does slip into round 2 or 3, I think Malkoun's cardio top game just starts to take over here. Cody doesn't have much off his back, makes poor in-fight decisions. It's hard not to fade Malkoun out of principle for me at this number. Just due to the kind of limited skill set of him. But I like Malkoun, man. I think he wins a decision here.
Yeah, I think we're still looking. Well, I guess we kind of disagreed on that first fight of the night, but I mirror a lot of what you're about to hear here. I think Malkoun is the more cerebral, better all-around fighter than Brundage. Brundage obviously dangerous early, but proven time and time again he can't be trusted and will make bad decisions. I do think it's interesting that we have seen Malkoun get starched in 18 seconds by Phil Hawes. And if Brundage does go out there with that reckless abandon, there is potential for him to catch the chin or catch Malkoun before he settles into the fight. But after about that 2-minute mark, I do expect Malkoun to find his footing, really set that pace. And I highly doubt that Brundage could keep up with that. Even over 15 minutes, it does seem like Brundage kind of looks for a way out. If he doesn't get his finish early. So
yeah,
Malkoun, not really known as a finisher, but this could, just like Mizuki earlier on this card, I do think that this is a spot where a non-finisher has a clear edge over somebody who could quit, you know? So I like Malkoun here.
Good stuff.
Okay, so maybe the most interesting fight on the card, Tim Means versus Andre Fialho. You've got a far more experienced 39-year-old Tim Means sitting at a plus 160 dog against a one-dimensional power puncher coming off of 3 straight KO losses, man. I know that the Dirty Bird's best days are behind him, but this line does seem disrespectful. Means, has been KO'd 1 time in the past decade, and that was 8 fights ago. With all that being said, I do still find it hard to trust him here. I might, end up talking myself into this, as he does have clear advantages in cardio, chin, wrestling, but he does lack the finishing power in his striking that, he used to have 5-6 years ago. If he can't get that respect of Fialho early, he has such a soft midsection that I could see the power of Fialho finding that liver shot. All that being said, I'll tentatively pick Tim Means. Won't have a ton of exposure on this 40-year-old regardless of what I decide, but Tim Means is who I want to lean towards, especially at this price tag.
I love it, man. I love it. I really do. I kind of looking at Tim Means as my underdog of the week, like we used to have. I think doesn't go the distance is a good parlay piece for the week as well. You got 2 guys here on L3s, finished in some of those major durability concerns on both sides. But I'm with you, man. I don't think Tim Means should be this big of an underdog. This fight to me, 90% of the time is going to play out on the feet. If there's anybody that's pushing a grappling heavy pace, it's Tim Means, man. He's the one who's kind of found the love for wrestling lately. So if there's anybody that's going to mix it up, I think it's the underdog Tim Means. So, and then on the feet, man, Tim's longer. I think on the inside, Tim's a more technical boxer, throws in more combinations, will be more willing to work the body. Fialho's 29, man, and I know Fialho hits harder. And while Fialho might just not have a chin anymore due to the way he fights, I'm worried that Tim Means just his overall durability as a whole, fight miles and everything are kind of adding up on him. And I'm worried that the fast hands could kind of get to Tim and hurt him, man. But to touch on Andre Fialho, you said Tim Means has been knocked out like once in a day. So to go out here and lay minus 200 on a guy who's been knocked out 3 times in a 12-month span, that's crazy to me. I think the later this fight goes, that plus 160 turns into minus 160. I don't know, man. I think there are advantages Tim Means has in this fight, and I like to hear you on that side as well with me. Could be another bet I look at as well. Here's another fight, receiving a lot of love online. Miles Johns, Dan Argueta. Wanted to kind of look into this one here, man. Did some tape onto this one today. Argueta, he kind of almost seems like one of the mush bets of the week. I saw him at like minus 160 to last weekend, sitting at minus 200 at this point. And I do think there's a little bit of recency bias sitting there to see how dominant he was against Ronnie Lawrence last time out. Dan's a lifelong wrestler from up north. I'm pretty sure the guy has got a good ground game, good submissions, good ground control. But for a minus 200 fighter, again, kind of back to the point I brought up a couple minutes ago, he doesn't really offer me many paths to victory outside of his ground game. Miles Johns is one of these guys who he doesn't do anything great, but I think he does everything well. And I do think he's got really good wrestling, really good takedown defense. And if he's able to stop any of Dan's takedowns, this is a 50-50 fight to me, honestly. I don't see much finishing upside for either one of these guys. I think the fight goes the distance. So in that point, I kind of want the dog. But that caught my attention and started to look at the over 2.5 that they have at minus 165. We're talking like 63% or something. I think this fight goes to the distance at 73% clip. I really do. We're talking about bantamweights who Miles John, I said, had all his finishes in round 3. Argueta finishing guys that I think are on a little bit lower level than Miles John's. This is one of the plays that I'm more passionate about this week, man. I really like an over 2.5 here. I don't really bet those a lot of times, so when I do, I usually have some conviction on it. So I'm going to take Miles Johns to steal a decision here and kind of ruin some parlay Saturday.
I mean, yeah, man, I'm not sure. I did not expect the odds, although I do agree with them. Or at least I agree that Argueta should be the favorite. I was actually expecting Argueta lined as a dog, but I guess even though it was overturned, he did go out there and dominate Ronnie Lawrence, and that was a really good look. That was a really good look. Both guys being primary wrestlers, I do think that Argueta definitely uses his wrestling more than John's. John's having that power edge in this matchup, but with his defensive wrestling, I do think that he could stuff the attempts of Argueta. And if this fight does take place on the feet, I think John's would be lined as the favorite in that circumstance. I just know how determined Argueta is to get this fight to the mat, and I could easily see him making John's work for 15 minutes defending the takedowns without ever getting a chance to get off any significant offense of his own. So my official prediction, I wish it was closer to evens, but Argueta is the pick. And, either way, the over is hitting for you. So
yes, sir.
I do like that as a look for this fight. 135ers. I think that's a good bet. Moving up to the first fight on the main card in the featherweight division, Charles Jourdain taking on Ricardo Ramos. Not a fight that I'm very passionate about breaking down. I didn't give it as much of a look as I have some of these other fights on the card. I think Jourdain kind of proved against Crone Gracie in his last time out that he can keep the fight on the feet. And when he does make people pay. He has some punishing offense in his strikes. And I think that that's the exact game plan he's going to look here against Ricardo Ramos, who has gone to the well of getting the fight to the mat in all of his fights. I think he's averaging a little over 2.5 per 15 minutes. And I can't imagine him switching up that game plan, even though he is coming off of a KO, a knockout over Danny Chavez in his last time out. I'm going to go Charles Jourdain here to keep the fight on the feet, and his durability, volume, everything leans me to pick Charles Jourdain, although I'm not sure about laying a juicy price tag on him. I know minus 130 isn't that juicy, but still, it's a fight I wish was evens, and then I'd take Charles Jourdain, not one that I'm wanting to lay a lot of juice on.
This one's a tricky one to me because I've kind of flip-flopped back and forth. Earlier in the week, I was kind of favoring Ramos, doing some digging, some tape. I'm on the Charles Jourdain side here, but it's a fight I think they both have clear advantages in. And when you see anybody that has the jiu-jitsu, the accolades on the mat as Ricardo Ramos, and you see plus money next to their name, it's tempting against Charles Jourdain because the guy has holes in his takedown defense, But I do think,
or at least
did right. But I think there's even a bigger gap on the feet though than there is on the mat. I think Charles Jourdain's the far better striker, faster, way more volume, better Muay Thai, and 5 times more durable than Ricardo Ramos if it came down to it as well. Yeah, again, I kind of see past the victories for both guys. But I think Charles Jourdain's is probably going to outpoint him to a decision, man. I've seen some love for an under here. This is just a fight that in general I don't have the best read on, but I'm going to side with Charles Jourdain with you as well. This is a fight that I really like, man. Bryan Battle taking on AJ Fletcher at 170. Battle to me, if this fight plays out on the feet, he's a clear better striker here. All the size advantages, height, reach that you could want. The guy's precise with his shots, and he's a tough SOB, hard to finish, man. But I think Bryan Battle is one of these guys who's kind of stuck in the middle of 170 and 185. I think he kind of lacks the physicality of at 185. But I think this weight cut on him at 170 is one that he's not going to be able to make very many more times in his career. I think it's a tough weight cut for him. And then I struggle to want to lay chalk on him here. I know it's Fakhretdinov, and that's kind of where I'm torn. I think Fakhretdinov is legit as it comes, but styles make fights, and I think AJ Fletcher is a good wrestler, and I think AJ Fletcher can steal a round off of Bryan Battle. I think AJ Fletcher's an explosive guy, big-time athlete, good wrestling, good jiu-jitsu. I think this could be very much like the Semmelsberger fight. I think he could dominate in round 1, and then come round 2, come round 3, cardio, just like the Angelusa fight, man. He hurts him early and then fades late. So this fight kind of reminds me of Petrosky versus Battle on The Ultimate Fighter. I think we could see AJ Fletcher win the first round at a high clip, and then round 2 and 3 really start to swing toward Bryan Battle. So I think Bryan Battle's round 2 and 3 props are a good look this week. I think Bryan Battle is one of the best live betting opportunities this week. So as much as I like AJ Fletcher, I do think Bryan Battle is going to get either a second or a third round submission here.
Yeah, I like Bryan Battle in this matchup for sure. You talked about the Fakhretdinov loss. I mean, I just throw that out the window completely. In my head, the level of competition he should have been fighting up until this point, he's really been delivering. Gilbert Urbina, Tresean Gore, Takashi Sato, Gabe Green. Those are guys that he's supposed to beat. And I liken all of those guys to a Matthew Semmelsberger, Angelusa level of fighter. And the fact that he's not dropping those fights makes me like him. Plus, you get all the physical advantages that Bryan Battle will bring into this matchup. I think AJ Fletcher is an undersized 170er. He's 5'9", at least. I think he might be listed at 5'10" now, but he was 5'9" when he came into the UFC.
Don't quote me on it, but I think he has the shortest men's reach.
I think you're right. The T-Rex arms. He's got the.
I think there's women with longer reach than like Marina Rodriguez might have a longer reach. We should check that out.
So yeah, dude, I don't know, and I do understand that the battle line might be a little bit inflated because he was coming in. I bet him as a dog against Gabe Green, and he comes in and gets a first round knockout. He was kind of put in a position where I don't think that that's how he likes to fight, but he's down to fight that way, and I do love that about him. He's a really tough guy, and at 170, he poses a lot of problems to a lot of people. And AJ Fletcher just seems to be that level that he's shown that he can beat. So he's my pick. Maybe, like you said, the live spot might be better as AJ is a little bit of a fast starter, but Battle will be the pick for me. Moving up the card to the featured bout of the night, Marina Rodriguez taking on Michelle Waterson Gomez in their rematch fight, 115 pounds. I don't see this going too much different than the first one, man. I think Marina's the better striker. I can't imagine Waterson's game developing anymore at her current age. I don't think that she has the means to get the fight to the ground where she might hold some advantages. So, as long as Rodriguez has her gas tank, it's only a 15-minute fight this time. I do think that she's going to keep it on the feet and piece Waterson up. Waterson getting older, hard to trust her. She could go out there and dominate Waterson. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add to it, to be honest with you. If their last 5-rounder was cut at 3 rounds, it's 30-27 for Marina. I know they're both a bit older in age, but I don't know. Marina still, to me, honestly, man, I think Marina wins this fight like 8 out of 10 times. You have to take Marina Rodriguez down, or you have to sleep her, and I don't think Michelle Waterson is going to be successful doing either of the two. I like Marina Rodriguez to. I don't know. I think she takes a clear decision, but I'm not opposed to people even saying that she could finish Michelle Waterson here. I like Marina Rodriguez. I got a parlay that includes 2.5 units on her there. Moving on to the co-main, 2 really good fights left to talk about, man. At 145, we got Bryce Mitchell taking on Dan Ige. And much like our main event, you could definitely classify this one as a striker versus grappler matchup. And I like Bryce Mitchell, man. I do, just as a fighter, as a human, everything. I enjoy watching Bryce Mitchell, but I don't really understand this. Maybe I understand people betting him early at minus 135, but for him to almost move 100 points to sit at minus 220, I don't really agree with that. Just flat out being honest with you, this fight, it's a very good resemblance to a Damon Jackson type of fight. Damon Jackson is a good wrestler. Damon Jackson has very good jiu-jitsu, and he was unsuccessful getting Dan Ige down. And then I watched the last fight, and, man, I know it was Topuria. Bryce says he had the flu. I'll be the first to say that I think Bryce might have gassed a little bit quicker than normal. Bryce, I don't know if it was quit. I don't know if it was the beating that he took. He looked like he didn't want to be there anymore, man. He
was up against the future champion, Ilia Topuria.
You're right. there is a look in his eyes. I don't know if Bryce Mitchell's going to be the same anymore, man. There was a look in his eyes like he knew, damn, I'm never going to touch the belt again if I have to fight this kid again. There was just a look in his eyes that Bryce didn't want to be there anymore, and I don't like that, to be honest with you. I think he has to get the fight to the mat. I think his striking's pretty basic. We seen him drop Edson Barboza, but I think it was more Edson being so timid and shocked of the takedown incoming. Ige is as tough as they come. He's a far better boxer. He'll work your body. He's never been finished before, fought the far better list of guys. I think Dan Ige will never be a champion, but I think Dan Ige is an elite fighter, and getting an elite fighter, a very well-rounded fighter, a very durable fighter with an advantage in this fight at plus money is tempting to me, man. And I think it's just kind of my liking of Bryce Mitchell that's preventing me from pulling the trigger on Dan Ige. So going to look at more of this fight, but I think it's clearly dog or pass right now, and I'm going to pick Dan Ige.
I think calling Ige an elite fighter is a little bit of a stretch. He's a serviceable fighter in the high or low rankings of the 145-pound division. Truthfully, the guys that are still fighting that Dan Ige's lost to, Movsar Evloev, Josh Emmett, Calvin Kattar, I think all of those guys put the fear of God into Thug Nasty's eyes the same way that Ilia Topuria did. Man. You know? I mean, you look at Dan Ige's career, or Bryce Mitchell's career, everybody kind of expected the Edson Barboza fight to be really close, and he went out there and dominated Edson Barboza. Ige's wasn't as dominant, but he has a win over Edson Barboza too. Then he's thrown together a couple of solid wins over Tucker, Jackson Landwehr. None of those guys are great, right? But they're all guys that he's performed. This is going to be a great litmus test for both guys. I do think that this is the point where Bryce figures out if he can't beat the likings of Dan Ige, then he most definitely can't take a step up to the top 10 of the division at 145, where Dan Ige's seen the best of the best that 145 has to offer, and he's never been finished. He's gone toe to toe with all of them, even though he's not getting the nod. Where Bryce, like you said, I think it caught him off guard the first time he had any real, any real competition where he's not having his way with him by dominating him in the grappling. Ige's the type of guy where I think that he's, built the right way where he's going to be able to pop up to his feet. He's, got the cardio. I don't know. He's going to make Bryce work a lot. I don't know. I think I'm picking Ige as well. Bryce, Ige as well, especially at dog odds. So yeah, I'll end with that. I'll take Ige. Moving on to the main event, Rafael Fiziev taking on Mateusz Gamrot. I think this is a really tough fight to call. I think clearly Gamrot is the more well-rounded fighter of the two. We've seen him gone 5 rounds. We've seen him outstrike people, out-wrestle people. And I'm still a little hesitant to play him, man. Fiziev has put together a great highlight reel in his UFC career, has formed a pretty diehard fan base in that process. And comes into this matchup with some of the most highly touted striking that the UFC has to offer. He's the striking coach at Tiger Muay Thai. He's very physically strong and has faced wrestlers in the past with success. It's really just his willingness to engage in brawls, like in his last fight with Justin Gaethje, that's gotten him into trouble. I do think what I like in this fight is I see both fighters having potential for finishes. I think if Gamrot can get this to the mat late specifically, I see him finding a submission on a gassed Fiziev who, his ground isn't his forte. And if it is over 5 rounds and Gamrot can continue to make him work, I could see him dying down with the muscle mass that he has. And then on the Fiziev side, liable to catch Gamrot coming in on any of the 200 takedown attempts that Gamrot's going to need to extend this fight out. And we see Gamrot get dropped in like every other fight that he has in the UFC. I think I'm going to go with Gamrot, although it does suck that I'm like having to bank on a fighter to be maybe not perfect, but he's going to have to fight a really good fight for the length of this match before Fiziev starts to slow down, and there's a lot of dangerous attacks that he's going to have to get through. So for me, I'm kind of looking at the under. I think it's close to even money, and
it is at 4.5 rounds.
Yeah, and it's like I think Gamrot he could submit him. He's got that type of edge over Fiziev on the ground, and then obviously Fiziev can catch him, and Gamrot exposes himself on his injuries. So the under is looking like a play for me, probably more than picking a side. As far as picking a side, I'm going to go Gamrot. I think he's a better fighter. I'm not going to bank on somebody who's never been knocked out to, get knocked out here against Fiziev.
Yeah, we almost seem like we're on the island this week with Gamrot, man. I see a lot of love for Fiziev out there this week, and personally just don't get people laying the juice. He has his advantages in this fight, but so does Gamrot, and we're talking about a fight between top lightweight prospects that we see go to decision time and time again, razor close decisions as it is. My biggest thing, Fiziev, throws heat in every shot. He's got the striking advantage. The body kicks, man. Jalen Turner, Benil de Rouge in particular was wearing Gamrot out with the left body kick, and it's something that can really, really deter the takedown from coming. That's something I think Fiziev has to have. But if he doesn't get his body kick going, dude, we're talking about Gamrot in one of not only just the pace he can wrestle at for 5 rounds, but like this dude doesn't need a perfect takedown to get you down. He can shoot from feet away, grab a ankle, and turn it into a single leg, put you on the fence, turn it into a double leg. Like the guy is a fantastic chain wrestler, and he can do it at a pace that people just can't keep up. And I do think that 2.5 round mark, 3 round mark, things are going to heavily start to swing toward Gamrot. I will not say that Jalen Turner has the same striking level of Fiziev, but I think Jalen Turner is more of a dangerous opponent as far as finishing upside than Fiziev is, with his 6'3" frame, with as hard as he hits, with his submission upside. I thought that was personally more dangerous fight to Gamrot to take, and he took it on short notice, still won it, man. Then we talk about a guy who's went 5 rounds with Arman Tsarukyan, a guy I think is going to hold the belt one day, a guy I rate higher than Fiziev. And the fact that you're able to even get Arman down, go to the scrambles with him, dude, you really can't convince me that this is a 62 to 38% fight in favor of Rafael Fiziev. I think it's 50-50, man. I really do. I'm tempted to look at Gamrot. I know FanDuel has 4 or 5 decision at plus 200. I'm really looking at Gamrot, man. I like that money side.
Here's the other thing. It's like his last 3 fights that have gone to decision, Jalen Turner, Benil Dariush, Arman Tsarukyan, completely well-rounded fighters, every single one of them. Whereas the 3 fights before that, where Gamrot got 3 finishes in a row, are against one-dimensional fighters like we see here. Diego Ferreira, mostly a grappler, Jeremy Stevens, striker, Scott Holtzman, striker. Yeah. This is another fight where he's up against somebody who does have deficiencies in their game, and Gamrot's the type of guy who I do think can exploit those holes. So, yeah, him to win and him to win inside the distance. Those are, or the fight not to go to decision as somewhat of a hedge for the Fiziev side. I like both those looks.
Yeah, man. Again, sounds like we might be on an island this week with Gamrot, but glad to hear that you're on the same side here with me. All 11 fights we talked through. I think we did a damn good job breaking those down, tossing out some good bets, man. I know there's no fights next weekend. Going to be on vacation the week after that, so I do believe we're going to get something out early for the Bobby Green versus Grant Dawson main event. So you guys keep an eye out for that, and make sure to keep an eye out this week on Twitter for the rest of our bets. We'll see you next week.
Peace.